place for Christianity in the New World Order?
No, not ultimately. For the moment, yes. Those who are managing the New World Order see the church in its structure, in its visible organization, as a source of social stability. It's schools, it's universities, it's people obeying what they're told to do. If you can get a hold of that organization, you literally control the lives of nearly 1 billion people. Remember, we are almost 1 billion people today, nominal Catholics. If you get that in train, under control, think of the power you have. But for the idea that these people would practice contraception, would not practice contraception, would not practice abortion, would insist on social justice for all nations and the proper distribution of wealth, superfluous wealth, who would vote against war as a means of making money. I mean, remember, the merchants of death make money on war, as they do in Bosnia-Herzegovina now, as they do in Somalia, as they do in Indonesia, as they do in Africa, as they do in Angola, as they do in Latin America, as they do in Europe, as they do in Armenia. All that will be wiped out. Oh no, that's no place for that. Behind it all, Bernard, there is this mysterious thing which we must touch upon. And we can't say much more than what I'm going to say. There's no doubt about it that it's not merely that there are a crowd of men and women who are, strictly speaking, Luciferian. That is, they believe that this universe is dominated by an intelligence which is intracosmic, which is worldly, which is not God. It's Satan, really. And that if they carefully follow the dictates of this spirit of intelligence, they will create a safe and happy world for some people, for themselves. But there's much more than that. We have sufficient evidence to know that within the Roman Catholic institutional organization, Satan has been enthroned. He has been given a place by his adepts and surrogates amongst the clergy and amongst the people. And one of John Paul II's difficulties today is that he is frustrated because within the fold, within the sanctuary, as Paul VI said, there is now a positive influence by Satan who has servants among us, servants among the priests, servants amongst the nuns, servants amongst the bishops, servants among the cardinals. He is being served, and therefore he can frustrate the will of the Holy Father and the will of Jesus through the Holy Father. We know this. The historical circumstances of the enthronement of Satan in the Church of Rome is something else. But this is a fact we have to deal with. We can't get rid of it until Our Lady comes with great power. Because once you do something like that, once that happens, God doesn't act immediately. He's a macro manager. He manages things in the long run. And if men turn their back on him, he lets them turn their back on him. He doesn't force them back. And there is this now power within the church, satanic power. It's Satanist. And it is influencing our actions and decisions as bishops and as priests and as cardinals and as administrators of the church. Until Our Lady comes and cleans that out, sorry pal, we have to carry it and fight it. That's why Satan has such power today. That's why there's such corruption. That's why grace can't work. Remember, the early missionaries who went to China and Africa, they found that when they went into a village or a group of pagans, their first difficulty was physical. They ran into physical difficulties because Satan ruled there. He didn't want them there. And there are stories, true stories about trying to change the place names in streets from the name of a god to the name of one of the saints, and the ladder would be taken away from the man. He'd fall down and break his neck, and water was polluted, and there were physical difficulties because Satan does acquire physical power once you admit him to your household, and he has great power. Remember that the existence of Satanism in this country is an established fact, that we have at least 8,000 covens, Satanist covens, which include priests and nuns as well as all. So that's where we have gone so far. The point to be noticed by Christians and Catholics above all is that Satan has been enthroned. And poor Paul VI, at the end of his life, regretfully had to say, the smoke of Satan has entered the church, has entered the sanctuary, and is around the throne. He knew. He knew.
Was this foreseen by Pope Leo XIII?
Yes, it was. It was. And we know it all. When you examine all the evidence back in the last century to today, it all stacks up to the following: that in the latter years, in the last decades, and the last decade above all, of this century, the second millennium, Satan has a one last wild fling because Our Lady is coming. And he knows that's the end. That's the end of his reign. So his 1,000 years of freedom to destroy the church will be over by the end of this millennium. And this Pope, this poor man, innocent in all he was chosen as Pope precisely at this moment. That's his fate, his terrible fate, that he was chosen to be the Pope. And after he dies, or after he's killed, or after he resigns, or whatever, then we have the mourning of the magician. We don't know what's going to happen. We do know Our Lady will come and save us.